I have learned that space does not reward eloquence. It rewards nerve endings, or rather the willingness to trade them. Every alien court I have visited has asked for a little flesh in exchange for meaning. A scale, a tear, once the skin from the soles of my feet so a chorus of photosynthetic jurists could map the way I carried my grief. But Vesperon 8 revises the contract. Here the price is poised outside my airlock in the shape of towering translucencies that could wear my whole biography like a glove. I kneel on the cracked decking of my field dome, coaxing a maintenance drone the size of a child's lunchbox through a pressure slit that never reseats cleanly. My shoulder stings where the Voth tasted me 3 nights ago, a crescent of half-healed tissue that sometimes responds to their presence with its own heartbeat. The drone complains in muted static, power cells low, optics frost-scummed. I hush it with the same monosyllabic hum I once used to cradle vent rat pups on a derelict ark ship. Out here, reassurance is the closest thing to prayer. The exterior cameras relay a panorama of the plane. Dawn on this planet arrives as a slow cayenne bruise spreading under a graphite sky. 11 stone circles litter the horizon, monuments raised by extinct cultures the Concorde catalogued, mourned, and moved on from. The Voth ignore those ruins, they attend only to me. 12 of them today, their bodies standing as vertical sheets of refracted gel, glinting with interior veins of colorless light. Each holds something carefully molded, the likeness of one of my organs rendered in their own tissue. A spare lung, a slice of spleen, half a tongue. They dangle the replicas on ribbon-thin strands that sway in a wind I cannot feel. When the strands tighten, the organs twitch, matching my pulse. A squawk from my wrist console interrupts my morbid inventory. Tamba. Status. Captain Oren's voice always sounds like he is leaning past 1,000 more urgent crises to address me, because he is. I picture him on the Sable Courier in orbit, command panels littered with outage lights, sensor ghosts, and the question of whether to glass the surface before whatever is happening to me spreads to him. Alive, I tell him. Stable, engaged in observation. Define engagement. I glance at the Voth holding my simulated heart. Engagement. The word suddenly feels carnivorous. Reciprocal nonviolence, I improvise. Mutual sampling of semiotic cues, no overt hostility. Oren exhales through his teeth. He is a career officer, bred to trust metrics, not metaphors. But I outrank him in this single domain, the unknowable. He detests me for it, which is understandable. I dislike myself plenty in these hours between certain failure and improbable communion. Tamba, Fleet Actual reports grav shear alignment in 47 hours. Hold position until fire support is within range. No improvisations. The feed clicks off before I can promise anything false. I sit back on my heels, palm the drone's visual array, and whisper a time-stamped note. Captain's orders conflict with situational ethics. Possible delay will corrupt emergent grammar set. The drone chirps assent. It is an old model, still running heuristic translation firmware that once mapped scent-based epics on Lyri Prime. I trust its curiosity more than the fleet's caution. I flex the shoulder wound. Recent scans confirm the Voth did not inject venom, but my lymphatic system glows in ultraviolet now, tracing glyphs I cannot read. Sometimes I tilt a mirror and study the bruising shapes, hoping insight will appear the way constellations do, because humans like to find animals in indifferent skies. Instead, I see only partial clauses in a language written with me, not to me. Outside, one Voth folds. That is the only accurate verb. It folds downward, like a scroll deciding to summarize itself, until its height compacts into a hunched coil. The others follow. Their gelatinous arms press the organ replicas into the soil, arranges them in a spiral that centers on my doorway. A single inhaled breath, then stillness. My training insists this is a greeting, a deictic marker indicating spatial reference. I am the axis, they the rotation. but instinct whispers that I have just been offered an ultimatum drawn in anatomy. Join the grammar or choke the sentence. I cycle the inner lock and step onto the antechamber's grate. My suit remains sealed to the neck, but I leave the helmet clipped to a thigh loop. They need to see a face, even if they have no eyes, even if the gesture is purely for me. The hatch groans inward. Outside air glides across my shins, warm and oddly fragrant, a note of oxidized copper laced with crushed sage. I taste fear automatically and find it wanting. Curiosity dominates. I advance until my boots meet the perimeter line where the spiral begins. Spleen, lung, tongue, heart at the far end. They have mirrored my internal geography from left to right. Accurate, except the heart appears larger than life, big enough to cradle in both hands. You went inside, I say, not sure whether I address them or myself. Silence answers, thick as oil. I crouch by the counterfeit spleen. Its surface ripples, translating my proximity into movement. A shy contraction, the way muscle responds to voltage. I reach out. Skin meets membrane. The texture is soft, neither wet nor dry, warmer than my glove. It feels inquisitive. The Voth who placed it shifts. Its torso dilates, blooming a radial display of striations that sketch geometric arcs through its body. I have witnessed similar postures in hive courtship duels, where couples exchange memory through fluid jets. But this is not desire. This is inquiry. I do not have the authority to give more, I say. A confession. But authority is a crumbling scaffold anyway. There is a flick, again folding. The Voth nearest the mock heart straightens, lifts the organ by its filament and takes one step towards me. I rise. Our heights invert convention. I am the smaller voice. The heart's surface shows tiny ripples tracing my systole. They must be sampling me in real time, mapping each beat into this construct, making sure the metaphor remains alive. I extend my arms slowly, palm up, human sign for offering. The heart settles into my glove, heavier than expected. It thrums, synchronized to me. The Voth holds the filament loose, allowing me to claim full weight. In the moment of transfer, the others lean forward. Not a crowding maneuver, more a collective breath. I feel the anticipation passing through them like an atmospheric front. Pain flickers where my shoulder was bitten. The scar radiates warmth, echoing the heart's rhythm. I recognize the prompt. They are reopening the conversation begun with teeth. The heart is a blank page, and I hold the ink. I press 2 fingers to the replica's outer layer. The surface is semi-transparent, its inner layers flickering with electrochemical flashes, like distant lightning rippling beneath sand. I feel the carbonized echo of my own blood inside. I acknowledge the greeting, I say in Voth fashion. I let the words drop in pitch until they are barely voice at all, then exhale through clenched teeth. To them it resembles the hiss of escaping heat, a respectful interval. The Voth quiver, a ripple of mutual attention, like a crowd leaning to hear a whisper. The heart warms further, then begins to dissolve along the edges, liquefying into my glove, soaking fabric, seeping through seals until it coats skin. The substance is harmless, or so I hope. It absorbs, not burns. By the time I pull back, the heart is gone. My palm is luminous. The Voth straighten one by one. The spiral collapses. Organ replicas draw upward, reversing their placement until only the ground remains. They retreat 3 measured paces and stop. Inside my earpiece a voice crackles. Field Medic Gale, whose calm usually anchors my frayed nerves. "Rayan, your vitals just spiked. Are you compromised?" "Conversing," I reply. That's not a medical status. Yet it is everything that matters right now. I glance at the Voth. They just handed me their half of a sentence. Now they wait for mine. Gale swears, then, "Concord Protocol will strangle meaning in its crib." The words escape harsher than intended. I soften. "Gale, can you log this as low-threat contact event, slight biomaterial exchange, no aggression? It buys us time." Silence stretches. Finally, logged. But Ryan, be sure the sentence ends where you want it to. I end the channel. The Voth nearest my original bite lifts an arm. A delicate fissure opens along its length, revealing interior layers that recall coral, or maybe the cross-section of a nebula. It points toward my dome. An invitation to step back, perhaps, or to bring them inside. The ambiguity is deliberate. Conversation lives in the space of possible moves. I raise my still luminous hand. The glow has settled into branching filaments, tracing capillaries, then converging at the wrist. I feel no pain, only a pull, gentle but insistent, as though the mapping continues beyond my skin. A thought surfaces, bright and searing as the flare of a weld. Ambassador Rill stepping onto this very plane 3 days ago, the first human body to cross the perimeter of the unknown. She wore the pale ochre uniform of Concord diplomacy, neural patches on her wrists pulsing a slow lavender meant to signal openness, non-threat, peace. Protocol required that she keep her hands visible, palms forward, but Rill went further. She unlaced her gloves, exposed bare skin to the sunless air, and smiled as though the silence itself had offered her tea. I watched through the drone's optic, meant to be detached observation, a clinical word. Yet every breath in my throat felt raw and personal. The Voth emerged like panes of living resin, encircling her in a loose hexagon. Even now I can replay each micro-gesture. Her shoulders angling just so to present her heart center. Her voice steady as she spoke the greeting phrase our linguistics team had stitched together from conjecture and desperate hope. No reply. She took one more step, and the nearest Voth folded an arm through her torso, as though her ribcage were mist. Rill gasped once. Not terror, more the shock of sudden cold, then raised her right hand higher as if reminding herself to finish the gesture. The Voth answered by dissolving that arm, molecule by molecule, light refracting in tiny rainbows across his visor. She never screamed. Her eyes tracked something only she could see, widening not in fear but wonder, until her face blurred, edges erasing, astonishment lingering half a second longer than flesh. And then she was gone, her last breath still hanging like frost between them. I carry that astonishment like contraband. It weighs more than grief, because grief allows distance. Astonishment demands participation. I could retreat now, wait 47 hours for Fleet Actual to arrive and scour this plane with kinetic fire. But bombardment would not end the conversation, only sever its tongue and leave Vesperon 8 muttering nonsense forever. The Voth would persist. Words half-spoken often do. So I stand at the threshold, heart glow soaking through my skin, the bite on my shoulder tightening like punctuation, protocol dripping uselessly between my fingers, and ask the only question that will fit inside my throat. What does finishing feel like? By the time the planet's second sun climbs out of the horizon's iron haze, the Voth have withdrawn beyond visual range, leaving only drag marks in the sand where my counterfeit organs once lay. I return to the dome to catalogue samples and discover that my suit's data glove, the one soaked by the dissolving heart, now registers my fingerprints as foreign tissue. Every scanner chirps a polite rejection, as though it no longer recognizes who I am. I override the security gates with a voice print and climb the narrow stairwell to the habitat roof. From there, I can trace the Voth's departure trail. A broad ribbon of glassy soil, still warm, leading toward a ravine never mapped in our original survey. Curiosity is a predator that hunts its handler. I secure a field kit, remind the orbiting frigate of my coordinates, and set out alone. The daylight smells of scorched cloves, a byproduct of vanadium in the upper clouds. Each step crunches through thin crust into softer dust underneath, like cracking sugar on creme brulee. 2 clicks in, the ground begins to glitter with green inclusions. My visor identifies them as vitrified rock, surface sand instantaneously fused by unknown energy. The effect thickens until the land becomes a frozen wave of broken glass, crusted over something darker beneath. I thumb the visor opacity down and descend into the ravine. She waits at the bottom, exactly as the drone footage suggested, but more immediate in person. Dr. Thelma Rush kneels on a pedestal of fused stone the way monks kneel in old woodcuts, spine straight, hands resting on thighs, head tilted as if listening for the next candle to gutter. Half her torso remains human, pale skin stretched tight, hair braided back in Concord regulation rows. But the left flank gleams with a mineral sheen that catches the light and scatters it into branching lines, like moonlight diffracted across rippled water. Her ribs have become transparent scaffolding. Inside them, organs no longer exist as separate things, but as a single filigree of angles and seams. The transition is so clean it looks voluntary, as though her body agreed to be redrawn. I step into the circle of heat radiating from her, and my shoulder wound prickles in answer. The cams on my suit record automatically, but I force myself to narrate. Speech keeps panic from consolidating. Subject Rush. Physical hybridization confirmed. Structural integrity of transformed tissue appears sound. No decay. My voice shakes. She has been dead for at least 40 hours, but there is no smell, no hint of rot, only a crackle, like sap drying in a kiln. Closer inspection reveals shallow carvings along the surviving ribs. Some match shorthand glyphs Rush invented for quick lab notes, curling lines that denote enzymatic affinities. Others are unmistakably Voth geometry, those recursive angles they fold through their own bodies. I lift a hand to photograph them. My gauntlet display glitches. Whiteness blossoms across the screen, merging camera feed with sensor data until both dissolve into static shapes. A warning flashes. Semantic bleed detected. The suit's heuristics, cribbed from AI models that once mapped dream states, sometimes hallucinate pattern recognition when data conflicts. I smack the side of the display. It stabilizes, but the glitch leaves behind a residual afterimage. The glyphs curl and uncurl in my peripheral vision even after I look away. I am not ready to touch her. Instead, I circle the pedestal and spot an indentation behind her knees. She knelt on something softer before the ground vitrified around her. A field bag lies nearby, half melted, containing specimen tubes and a journal bound in polymerized tissue. The Concord budget item for scientists who hate losing notebooks to fungus. I tug the clasp open. Every page is covered in diagrams, skeletal cross-sections that predict their own transformation, stepwise, like instructions on how to assemble yourself from the inside out. The final page is blank except for a single phrase, inked in her neat print. I am beginning to make sense. I shut the journal and tuck it beneath my arm. The heat from the fused stone seeps through the suit, bread oven warm, comforting and horrific. A sudden murmur crackles across the comm. Not the frigate. A local channel, low power, bouncing through the ravine walls. The voice belongs to Gale, my field medic. I thumb the chin mic. I'm here. Your biometrics just clipped past safe mode again. You need to pull back. Negative, I have Rush's remains. She's preserved. I need to document. A hiss, static or Gale's frustrated breath. Just remember the protocol. Physical contact requires a two-person witness. I almost laugh. The only witness I truly have is already halfway into another ontology. Understood. I lie and kill the channel. I do, inevitably, place my hand on Rush's shoulder, the transformed side. It is warm, with a dry resilience like fired clay. My thumb finds a groove between geometries. A resonance thrums up my arm like wind trapped inside a reed. It rises through bone, syncs with my heartbeat, and for an instant I feel as if I'm kneeling too, sharing her exact pose. The glyphs along her ribs wink, edges rearrange, not visually. My eyes insist nothing moves. But conceptually, as if the pattern only changes in the corner of cognition where shapes become meaning. My palm pulls away and the imprint of her skin remains luminous a moment longer than should be possible. I whisper a thanks neither of us will ever hear and begin the trek back, journal secured. Atop the ravine, clouds bruise purple, promising storms made of ionized grit. The journey takes hours. During that time, I swear the terrain lengthens. Slopes tilt uphill both ways. Objects appear closer only to drift back. The suit's compass flips twice before conceding uncertainty. When I finally reach the dome, dusk has already guttered into a hard black night. Desert air snaps cold, the taste of cloves turns metallic. The comm grid on my desk flashes with 9 unanswered calls from Captain Oren. I postpone them and sync Rush's journal to the station archives. The AI reserves a hidden tag for anomalies, potential semiotic artifact. It requests encryption clearance. I stall. No point sending raw data into Command's paranoid mouth. I isolate a single sketch, a diagram of folded space labeled interior resonance chamber. The shape reminds me of a jawbone. Only then do I realize I am rubbing the crescent bite on my shoulder in slow circles, soothing an ache that feels suspiciously like anticipation. I down a ration of sedative tea and pull long shifts annotating Rush's notes. Around 3 a.m. station time, the habitat lights dim unexpectedly. When they return, I'm in a corridor I do not remember entering, standing before a bulkhead welded shut with old-world thoroughness. 7 overlapping plates, seams slagged. According to the deck plaques, this leads into an unused cargo recess. The metal under my fingertips radiates gentle warmth, and a low air current slips through a gap too fine to admit an insect yet large enough to carry voices. The lullaby of consonants and clicks emanates from within. My throat dries. No official map shows interior voids on this deck. I fetch a laser cutter. Sparks spit. Molten beads spatter my boots, and the hatch peels back. Warm air exhales over my face, heavy with a breeze that smells of burnt rosemary and old books. The room beyond is circular, wide as a chapel. Floor inlaid with 12 overlapping languages, etched in a spiral I can't entirely follow. Rows of gutted translation cores hang from the ceiling like abandoned cocoons. Their conduits dangle, snapped, but lays in the air as though gravity has been reduced. And at the center, impossible until I see it, then obvious, hundreds of floating jawbones. Human, animal, something in between. Each curves in its own arc, suspended by magnetics, still drawing power from some forgotten line. When I cross the threshold, the bones pivot to face me, not turning exactly, but aligning. A hush spreads. Then they speak, all at once, fragmented syllables dovetailing into a single statement. To translate is to divide. The consonants scrape like sea stones in tide pools. Vowels draw out, each jaw lending its own timbre. I stumble against the wall. Air thrums around me, and the phrase repeats, to divide is to lose. I am not naive enough to believe this is a ghost. More likely a residual heuristics loop running on latent charge, a last gasp of translators who burn themselves into circuitry. Still my skin prickles. I step closer, shoes skidding on dust-slick metal. A particular jaw, a child's, maybe 8 years old, drifts forward, tilting like a compass needle. 2 small molars dislodge, hover a moment, then fall with the clink into my outstretched palm. They are warm against the chill of the room. I have no idea why I catch them instead of letting them shatter. Instinct, perhaps, that bits of language want to be carried. I pocket the teeth, back away, seal the bulkhead as best as possible. No weld. If Command finds fresh work, they will pry. I choose secrecy over bureaucracy and hurry towards the infirmary because my heart beats off tempo. A triple skip, as though something has rewritten the pauses between contractions. Gale intercepts me near the ward. His brows pinch when he notices the soot along my sleeves. You look like you crawled through an exhaust plume. Found something, I say, showing him the molars. He recoils. They fit Rush's gap, I add, and that anchors his gaze. He covers the teeth with a specimen foil and slides them into a lead-lined box. I'm filing this as medical quarantine, he mutters. Nobody above us needs to know until we understand whether it's disease or... He pauses, scouring for the right word. Grammar, I finish. Gale has patched bullet holes on frontier colonies, and once performed field surgery with a carpenter's drill. But nothing here bleeds. Nothing stays inside its body, and I think that terrifies him more than death. Back in my bunk room, I peel off the undersuit. The bite wound on my shoulder has spread delicate traceries of translucent filaments that climb my neck like frost on glass. They do not hurt. If anything, they vibrate with comfort, as though someone has draped a warm cloth over the bone. I picture Rush carving her final note into her own ribs, steady-handed, accepting. I recall the jawbone chamber still rearranging itself now that I have taken 2 of its words. Outside, a tremor rattles the hull. Atmospherics claim a mild quake, but I know better. The Voth are on the move, shaping the night. Protocol says I should rest, but rules have become decorative. I rotate the molars in my palm until they click against each other. Twin punctuation marks waiting for a clause. Begin personal log, I say to the room, and it listens. Translation event in progress. Identity boundaries porous. Recommend observation of psychosomatic side effects, including spatial skips and sensor drift. Anticipate escalation. I stop, rub my eyes. Am I still afraid? I ask the empty air, and the molars flash in the low light, glossy as wet stones. The answer, like every answer lately, is a question folded inside another question, waiting for the right mouth to open. I wake to the smell of cloves boiled down to tar and the crackle of a lockdown siren that never quite decides whether to grow loud or fade away. Night must have passed, though its memories sit scrambled in my skull like shuffled cards. I find myself standing inside the infirmary, shoulder pressed to chilled glass, staring at the lockbox where Gale stored the orphan molars. Either I walked here in my sleep, or distance has stopped caring about footsteps. Gale is slumped at his desk, boots on the console, arms folded over his chest. At first, I think he is asleep. Then I notice every muscle in his jaw flexing, as if chewing on something that will not break down. A strip of gauze trails from his lower lip. When he senses my movement, he jerks upright, ashamed, and tears the bandage free. "Bad habit," he mutters. "Stress makes me gnaw." "I've seen you pull shrapnel from a miner's lung without blinking," I say. "What rattled you?" Instead of answering, he thumbs a surveillance feed onto the wall. The camera peers down the main habitat corridor. A shape lies motionless in the middle of the passage, a body face up, mouth propped wide by something translucent and petal-shaped. The petals sway, though there is no airflow. "Larson from comms," Gale says. "Found him an hour ago. Whatever that is grew out of his throat in minutes." I pinch the bridge of my nose, trying to draw order from nausea. The petaled organ resembles no native flora catalogued by Concord, yet some instinct declares it familiar, like hearing a tune you're sure you once knew before birth. Is it alive? Depends how you grade alive. It registers bioelectric drift but no metabolic signatures. Keeps time with nearby heartbeats if those heartbeats are close enough. When I went near it, Gale presses his thumb into his palm like anchoring himself. I started talking. Couldn't help myself. Confessed things I haven't even admitted to myself. Then it quieted down, almost like it had eaten. So the rumors in Rush's notes were prophecy. A silence bloom, a listening mechanism grown from borrowed tissue. I approach the screen and study its contours. Thin silicon-veined membranes, 5 petals, each ridged like the inside of an ear. The color is neither pink nor white, but the ghost of both. Around the corpse, crewmates linger, half of them pressing palms to chests as though forced to pledge allegiance. The others edge back, frightened of their own truths. I leave Gale to his triage paperwork and head for the corridor. The air outside the infirmary is humid. Habitual climate controls starve for power each time the Voth come near, like lungs holding breath. At the junction, I meet Captain Oren. He looks carved from basalt, tall, angular, a uniform worn without a speck of dust despite the station's increasing neglect. A ring of officers trails him. He blocks my path. "You're off the roster for fieldwork," he says without preamble. Command wants you sequestered until we determine whether that bite rewrote your genome. My genome is fine, I reply. Reality might be less intact. Oren's gaze flicks to the tracery creeping up my neck, filaments now branching near my ear. He lowers his tone. You look like you're germinating. Language germinates. I step around him, which is precisely the point. Behind me, someone coughs the word contamination. The corridor feels narrower, the walls bowing like ribs. Larson's body is still there, but the corridor has changed. Bulkheads that once ran straight now tilt in rhythm, as if the metal was asked to breathe. The silence bloom sways above the dead technician's face, its petals tasting the stale air. Two crew kneel at a safe distance, hands clasped, whispering fragments of apology. One confesses to falsifying flight hours, another to pocketing painkillers. With every secret, the bloom's petal tips curl, satisfied. I step into its radius. A resonance threads my chest cavity. My tongue pins itself to the roof of my mouth, eager to unload the guilt I carry. The falsified quarantine closure, my lingering envy of Rill's courage, the hidden thrill each time the Voth rewrite my cells. I clamp my jaw until it aches, refusing to feed the flower. The bloom responds anyway. Its petals adjust, now mimicking the bite pattern on my shoulder. A low vibration settles in my teeth, shaping consonants my throat is desperate to release. I whisper a single sentence, can't recall its meaning afterwards, and the resonance stops. The petals relax, then drift from Larson's mouth. They sail upward like jellyfish until they locate a wall console and fuse with the circuitry, spreading a translucent root network across alloy. The body below collapses inward, ribs folding as if conceding final punctuation. Then it too begins to dapple with silicon veins. Containment crews arrive, sporting improvised masks and fire blankets. Some aim micro-torches, others brandish shock batons, all of them flinching from their own reflected faces in the console's glassy sheen. One technician whispers, "The bloom is confession. Maybe it's harvesting narrative." Another retorts, "Then starve it." Voices overlap, fear breeding grammar of its own. By the time Gale reaches us, the bloom has produced a second bud already swelling from the dead panel. He pales. It's multiplying through conductive surfaces. We can't quarantine every wire. Captain Oren's orders come over the intercom. Sector C sealed until further notice. Non-essential crew confined to quarters. Weapons authorization level raised to 3. No one dares remind him that we've never used lethal force within a language event before. Not because of ethics, but because the last time we tried, a weapon disassembled itself into phonemes mid-burst. Night falls, though the planet's moons provide enough light to paint the windows grainy blue, and the station fractures into factions. Containment sect forms around Oren, armed with stunners and flamers, determined to hold geometry in place by sheer will. Across the atrium, the reverence sect gathers, engineers, linguists, a handful of desk officers suddenly dedicated to what they call the new syntax. They tattoo Voth glyphs along arms, cheeks, the thin skin between fingers. I watch a junior surveyor carve a pattern above her eyebrow with a laser stylus. She winces once, then smiles as blood beads beside fresh lines of shimmer ink. Gale remains neutral ground, bunking in the infirmary, stitching both factions when their inevitable scuffles crack bones. He begs me to rest, but I owe the night my eyes. I roam corridors that now kink at mind-warping angles, occasionally spitting me out in rooms 2 decks above without stairs in between. The station's AI issues apologetic chimes each time location tags contradict themselves. In the small hours, I stray near the sealed bulkhead that hid the translator's grave. The hatch stands open, weld marks peeled back like petals. Someone else has entered. When I step inside, the jawbones drift in new constellations, spelling thoughts beyond linear grammar. They hush when I arrive, rearranging to hold the shape of a sentence I almost recognize. To answer is to carry. 2 jawbones, adult premolars, hover toward me, clacking together like nervous castanets. They flip, exposing roots that have grown fresh nerve filaments glimmering with light. I accept them. They adhere to my palms, warm, collective heartbeats sinking to mine. There is no blood, yet I feel them drawing substance, meanings maybe pulled from marrow. I recall Rush's drawings. I fish the journal from my pack, flipping to her diagram of an interior resonance chamber. The shape overlays, in my mind's eye, with the jawbone arrangement. Missing elements slot together, her body, my body, these teeth, phrases in a syntax that spans organs and air. The room's ambient resonance rises. My skin filaments ripple as though wind passes through them, though the air is still. A vision surges. I see the plains outside, Voth bodies weaving arches formed of their own limbs, constructing a corridor of flesh and glass that leads into a darkness shaped like a throat. When the image fades, I am kneeling, palms upward. The premolars fuse to my gloves. The bones release with soft pops. They have shed their roots. The nerve filaments have transferred into my suit's fabric, now glowing. A chill curls across my back, not fear but recognition. The Voth just handed me another word. I leave the grave and find Captain Oren waiting at the junction, armed with a shock baton that looks pitiful beside the inhuman linguistics swirling through the corridors. His eyes snag on the glow at my wrists. "What did you take?" "A piece of grammar," I answer. "It wanted to be carried. That thing in Comms Bay wanted to be carried too. It left a man hollow." Oren tightens his grip. "Fleet Actual arrives in 9 hours. When they do, we sterilize the surface. You will stand down and prepare your report." Behind him, the corridor slips. For a heartbeat, I glimpse the Voth Cathedral from my earlier vision, lungs of living glass inhaling moonlit dust. Then reality snaps back. Oren notices nothing. "If you open fire, you won't end confession. You'll erase its grammar. The Voth will keep speaking, but we'll never decode the text we burned." "Not my problem," he snaps. "I safeguard human borders, which are blurring whether you admit it or not." Oren raises the baton. Gale rounds the corner just in time, smearing grease across his fatigues. "Captain, Larson's body is reshaping. Sector C walls are growing petals. We need Ryan in the loop, not in cuffs." Oren's posture sags under the weight of too many unknowns. He lowers the baton, points at me. "You get one last stroll, Tamba. One. Then I lock you in the infirmary until the fleet scrubs this rock clean." I nod, knowing it is a promise neither of us can keep. My last stroll begins at dawn. The habitat hatches yawn wider than design parameters, obliging passage. Outside, the ravine glints like broken mirrors under soft violet light. The Voth stand arrayed along its ridge, outlines shivering in the rising heat. They have sculpted a new edifice overnight, twin spires of fused sand curving inward to meet above the ravine floor, forming an ovular gateway. Within that archway, a path descends, lined with constructs resembling my vertebrae cast in translucent resin. Each segment clicks into the next when the wind brushes it, producing a distant xylophonic melody. I approach. The bite mark on my shoulder throbs, not pain, but invitation. The filaments on my skin flare, mapping the gate's proportions onto my body, measuring compatibility. I step beneath the arch. The vertebrae chime in sequence, acknowledging entry. The path slopes into shadow. Air here holds a sweetness like burnt honey, mixed with the mineral tang of cooling glass. Halfway down, I realize I'm no longer alone. Rush kneels beside the trail, or rather, the vision of Rush, her half-transformed body repeating the posture of her death. This copy is translucent, formed from compressed atmosphere and refracted dawn, but it gestures. She directs 2 fingers to her chest, draws a spiral outward, a prompt to align with her shape. I obey, mirroring her kneel, pressing my hands to thighs, inclining my head. The ground beneath responds, sinking to form a shallow basin around my knees. Energy climbs my legs, warm as morning sun through a blanket. The chime of vertebrae rises to a steady drone, matching my exhalations. The Voth converge. They do not touch me. They fold, wrapping themselves into coils that orbit the basin. Each coil emits a brief flare of spectral color when my heart contracts. I understand. They are reading. They can only translate what I am willing to place within their syntax. Words have gone obsolete. It is posture, breath, and memory that count. Somewhere far overhead, alarms howl. Oren's evacuation order, I guess. Someone screams about unauthorized launches. It all feels kilometers away, muffled by the thickness of this grammar. I breathe in. Filaments spread across my chest, tracing ribs, joining in the shape of a silence bloom. I breathe out and let the confession I refused earlier slip free. It is no longer shame, only data, and the air swallows it like nutrients. The Voth answer. Their bodies cambers outward, forming ribs, bronchi, sinew of light. Constructing a cathedral, a human could walk inside and maybe never leave. At its threshold they pause, inviting me forward. I stand, legs trembling, partly from awe, partly from an ache no field medic can soothe. My skin no longer belongs entirely to me. Each filament threads into the air, linking back to alien torsos, like a novice climber belayed by intangible ropes. Behind me, thunder cracks, the orbital frigate opening its kinetic batteries. I picture Oren's face etched with grim devotion. The first shell will land on the far side of the ravine in 60 seconds. I look into the cathedral and see no end. Some choices masquerade as madness when viewed from the wrong syntax. I step inside. As my foot crosses the threshold, the jewel-bright structure reshapes to fit me, the doorway dilating, ribs knitting overhead. The bite mark flares, a brief corona of heat, then cools to calm certainty. Outside, the sky splits white. Heat washes through the arch, yet cannot touch me. The Voth body walls absorb it, convert it into soft, luminous ripples. I understand now that they never intended aggression, only completion. I am a clause, half of a larger utterance, and they have waited graciously for my last punctuation. I breathe once more. My breath unspools as vapor. The cathedral inhales it, walls brightening. A voice, not a sound but an arrangement of sensation, fills my bones. We hear you. For the first time since Ambassador Rill vanished into astonishment, I feel lighter than fear. The bombardment outside continues, but here, inside a sentence made of bodies and borrowed thoughts, the world holds still enough to understand itself. And somewhere behind me, in the collapsing chorus of alarms and gunfire, I hear Gale shouting my name, half warning, half prayer. I almost turn. Almost. Instead, I kneel again, completing the posture, and the doorway seals in convergence, shutting out every unanswered question except the one I have become. The cathedral closes behind me with the quiet finality of skin knitting after a cut. Its interior absorbs all direct light, trading it for gradients that glide across curved walls like thoughts too swift to catch. Every surface feels alive, not with heartbeat or breath, but with the gentle give of conscious muscle. The floor remembers the sand it once was, yet bends under my boots as though guiding each footfall toward its own conclusion. I release my suit seals one by one. Warm air patrols the fresh gaps, tasting sweat and fear, rearranging them into something like patience. When the collar gasket snaps free, the cathedral exhales in relief, an almost maternal hush that settles on my shoulders. I peel the torso plates away, bearing the bite mark where all of this began. The filaments branching from that crescent now web my ribcage, veins of pale light under skin. They draw the eye in looping patterns, sentences still writing themselves. The Voth arrive without ceremony, bodies unrolling from the wall like scrolls that have waited centuries for a reader. The nearest raises an arm, and the membrane of its forelimb splits into ribbon-thin tongues that rest against my sternum. They are warm, adhesive, gentle. I expect teeth, rupture, ruin. But the ribbons only dissolve the boundary between outside and within. My epidermis slips into theirs the way ink joins water. There is pain, a white streak of it that chants my name in every nerve, yet buried beneath is an exhilaration so clean I mistake it for clarity. Memory bleeds first. Childhood nights cataloguing starfields from a city rooftop. The salted tea my mother brewed for migraines. The weight of Ambassador Rill's compad pressed into my palm the day she volunteered for first contact. Each recollection slides outward as though pulled by capillary action, funneling into Voth tissue that ripples with fresh colour. I feel the memories continue, spreading, duplicating, echoing, until they are no longer mine but ours. Their ribbons unfurl deeper, licking calcium and sinew. Bones soften to accommodate. When they stiffen again, they belong to both of us. My mouth opens, not to scream, I discover, but to speak in exhalations shaped by absence. Every breath a syllable, every dissolving tendon a transition. Through half-lidded eyes, I watch them trace the silence bloom across my chest, sculpting it in living parity. Where my heart once beat alone, a second cadence now overlays, slower, vaster, the tempo of 100-body comprehension. Outside, shock waves rumble, fleet actuals kinetic shells tearing ravines into desert miles away. The tremors reach us as shivers through the cathedral floor, and I taste Captain Oren's dread. The cruise divides, Gale's throat-raw plea for reason. The Voth taste it too, and flick their limbs in downward arcs. Reassurance, not toward me, through me. They fold again, and my perspective fractures into parallel vantage. One part of me kneels, half consumed. Another hovers above the station, tracing shell trajectories. A third lies curled in the translator's grave, where jawbones rearrange to mirror my new posture. Consciousness stretches until selfhood sounds like a nickname no one uses anymore. Yet I am not emptied. I curate which thoughts pass beyond. Lexicons, regrets, the timbre of human laughter. I keep one secret tucked behind a molar, Gale's quiet whistle habit, because even shared languages need small pockets of privacy. The Voth neither protest nor pry. They abide, integrating the omission as deliberate punctuation. At last the ribbons retract, leaving no raw edges, only the sheen of fresh scar that resembles polished opal. My vision swims. When it settles, I see through multiple vantage at once. Cathedral interior, clouds swirling above bombardment, electric veins racing through bloom-infested corridors. All linked, all responsive, a mesh of comprehension anchored by the shape that used to be Rian Timbre. I speak, not aloud but through shifting posture and changing blood chemistry. We can stay. The Voth reply by opening panels in the cathedral wall, revealing an outward-facing mosaic of organs, rendered in crystal and memory. My spleen glitters among them, duplicated yet intact inside me. Redundancy, they seem to say, is diplomacy. Then the cathedral quiets to a waiting hush, and knowledge settles. Translation is complete enough to survive without me at its center. I find comfort in the redundancy, too. My final autonomous act is a whisper-thin nod that ripples down every shared filament, an invitation to listen for the next speaker. Weeks later, junior linguist Amir Dre pushes a trolley of archival drives across the buckled landing platform, careful not to snag wheels on glassy divots scorched by the fleet's barrage. The sky over Vesperon 8 hangs clear, save for the silent flotilla of Voth bodies that drift in loose orbits, their figures aligned like quotation marks around the planet. They have not moved against Concord forces since the ceasefire, nor have they left. They merely keep watch, patient as tide. Amir is 26, freshly certified in comparative semiotics, and unprepared for the burnt sweetness that lingers in the planet's air. His assignment: review the post-incident footage, cross-reference it with surviving sensor logs and, most daunting, catalogue the structures the Voth erected from human memories. The workstations back on the command carrier call these constructions memorial nodes. The field team calls them prayer engines. No consensus yet. He begins at dawn, cycling through hours of visuals. Ambassador Rill's last moments, Dr. Rush's vitrified repose, Timbre disappearing into architecture that swallowed gunfire without a mark. Amir pauses, rewinds, Plays the final frames again. Ryan's profile backlit by inner radiance, posture calm, accepting. The violation of protocol is obvious, the poetry of the gesture harder to dismiss. Mid-afternoon haze dulls the screens. Amir scrubs hands through hair, decides the data will read clearer in situ. He steps beyond the ruined blast fence, following ground markers to the largest remaining construct, a ribbed arch grown from fused sand and translucent tissue. Wind slips through the hollows, turning them into low organ pipes that murmur between one note and the next. Each breath against the structure sounds like a question finishing itself. Close up, the material feels neither mineral nor flesh. It yields under his knuckles, then rebounds, warm. Patterns spiral across its span, intersecting traces of handwriting, pulse lines, and what might be jawbone trajectories. Amir's multilingual scanner spits out nonsense, then its display freezes on 2 words: "Carry me." He raises trembling fingertips to the nearest ridge. At first contact, the entire arch stiffens with alert curiosity. A pulse of muted color sweeps from his handprint to the apex, then circles back, slower, as though translating his existence into its own idiom. He feels a tug along his forearm, a gentle inquiry echoing along nerves. Amir's thoughts scatter. An unfinished doctoral thesis, the taste of brined figs, the memory of his mother's voice reciting bedtime myths about stars that swallow sailors only to sing their stories forever. The arch records each flicker. He can sense it, storing, itemizing, grateful for every scrap. Wind drops. Distant engines on the command carrier fall quiet. In the hush, Amir realizes the structure is waiting. A pause in dialogue, shaped exactly the length of his next choice. He draws a slow breath. Somewhere above, translucent sentinels adjust orbit to keep the arch in line of sight. Sand shifts underfoot, as though the planet itself leans closer. Amir places his other hand beside the first, opens his mouth to speak, but no words form. Instead, he feels the resonance of unspoken possibility, the question Ryan Tamber once asked, now balanced on new lips. The arch twitches again, softer than before, granting him all the time in the world to decide how to answer.